Our next speaker is Adrian Price, who is from the University of Northampton, but also one of the presenters at NLive Radio, who presents a business show, and that's what he's talking about, our business show and how to engage with businesses.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Martin, for the invite, for asking me to give up a Saturday morning to come and join you, maybe staying into the Saturday afternoon as well. But it's a great pleasure to be here. And on behalf of the university as well, warm welcome to you, because my day job is here at the university, as you'll see. So Martin asked me to talk about the power of a business show. And really what I want to go through is a little bit of the history, where we are now, perhaps some of the ideas, how we take it forward, and what I have personally learned on this journey, as much as perhaps how we can harness it more, and some of the questions on the university and what their role is and how do you get the benefits for the university, because it is quite an interesting dynamic that we haven't probably maximized those benefits yet. But anyway, it was good to hear Adrian Warner before with his, it's the Adrian Day, obviously, the Adrian Warner with his insights as well. So, the power of a business show. So my show is Open for Business. That's what it's called. And we'll talk a little bit about how the format's evolved and changed, but that's my kind of strapline. I think you like that. The guy from the university with the perfect face for radio. Every show for 5 years has started with that. And, sometimes, occasionally, I hear it out there in the community. I hear it fed back to me. My day job, as I say, Associate Professor, Strategy and Society. I'm very into business in the community. Business, fairer, better, more responsible business. And that's a theme that we wanted to come through from this show when it first started. So, what was the history? Well, going back to 2017, I think there was some, I didn't really know much about it, some call about more content needed for this radio show, and this was before Martin's time. So, I don't know, there must be in every lecturer a frustrated actor of some description. So I thought, that sounds like a bit of fun. Let me go along. So a guy called Mark Webber, who was probably similar to Adrian Warner teaching journalism here, he left the university. He does a lot of Football Focus. He's one of the match commentators that comes up on Football Focus, and tells about whatever. So Mark said, come along, a fellow Welshman. I think there's a fellow Welshman here. Somebody heard a Welsh accent. Mark said, come on, I'll help you, guide you through it. So for the first year, monthly show, he basically sat there in front of me and we did it together, really. And it started quite a journey. So what were the objectives? It really was to celebrate local business in the community, but business going over and above just making money. That's kind of one of the core themes. The name Open for Business was a subliminal approach to the university as Open for Business, because we're notoriously good at making it hard to engage with us. I don't know if you've had that experience. Who do I contact in the university? And we kind of hide behind lots of different walls. So we wanted to be approachable. Here we are. You can come and talk to us and come and see us. And by the way, I do need to see this, because I went swimming this morning. When you get too much chlorine in the water, I've only got one good eye, and the chlorine has kind of put a black spot in the one decent eye with this. So I want to be able to see what I've kind of written here. I mean, I can pretty much remember it, but just to make sure that I don't miss anything out. So it draws on a lot of local contacts. So by being curious or nosy, and the university gives you a great platform to do that, got to know a lot of people in this county. So that's a big help, to be able to pick up the phone and, initially starting with your mates. Will you come on this show? It's quite interesting, though, that as much for guest lectures as coming on the show, local business people have an ego. And you ask them to come and talk to some students about your great success story, or come on the radio and talk about your great success story. Most of them are pretty willing to do it, actually. So, it's not that difficult to get content. And over 5 years, we haven't run out of content, and I don't have that many mates. So it is kind of this thing does begin to snowball in some ways. It is about responsible business and the classic style. So this is terribly arrogant of me, a cross between Jeremy Vine and Tony Blackburn. So we wanted to have some chat, some content, and I wanted to do, and you know what I love most? Choosing the music. That's the one thing I really enjoy, is when I send the program to Martin, Tom Jones, ABBA, you can just about get the feel, really. A lot of classics, but usually upbeat music classics as well. So I want the show to be positive, celebrating Northampton, Northamptonshire, and very, very upbeat as well. So 2019, we tried to move to twice a month and a live show as well. And we did some really crazy things, like trying to have a food and drink tasting on radio. And it kind of worked, because we had people in who were drinking some of the local gin and trying some of the local food. And, we had a bit of a giggle. I don't know if it was good radio, actually, but we tried lots of different things, featuring the very strong artisan food and drink sector that we have here. Very strong artisan food and drink sector. So, and really since then, that's been a regular theme that we've returned to year after year. I have to admit, I have not learnt to manage the deck. Right, I can't multitask, guys. I can do one thing. I can speak, or I can, listen to my guests, but doing the thing at the same time. So going live was a challenge, but I've always had very good support, and Martin has certainly carried on from Mark Webber in giving me that support. So we tried lots of different things. Martin joined the station, and then 2020, literally about a week after lockdown, he said, I want to go weekly. We want to change the format to, instead of 3 minutes, because of the previous station manager, 3 minutes maximum talking. And, give a lecture of 3 minutes. That's hard work. We want to extend on things. So Martin said, no, let's try extended interviews. 15, 18, 20 minutes without music, 3 or 4 per show, and then we can put the music around it. So we're probably, 80 minutes in a 2-hour show is talk, and 8 or 9 songs, something like that, then a few connecting clips. And really that format, weekly since April 2020, that's where we're at in terms of style, structure, and format. And I think it works very well. I use Zoom, so it doesn't mean me having to be in the station at the same time as my guests. It's much more easy to do the pre-recorded Zoom call. Can I have some questions up front? No. 5 minutes before we press the record button, we'll talk about roughly what we're going to, the order, what we're going to talk about. But normally, if they don't know enough about themselves, their job and their career, so they should feel comfortable about that. And it really is inviting the guest just to talk about and opening up for them to tell us their story. I use, by the way, Voice Record Pro. I know I'm talking to lots of industry specialists here, but I think that's a tremendous tool. So I've even been where in Asia, having to do the connecting clips, and Voice Record Pro is superb. Record it, send an email, and Martin gets it, and it's really a fantastic tool along with the Zoom for the main interviews. And we also started to convert the interviews into podcasts. And, this does require me to do a paragraph for each interview. I'm a bit behind on that, and I do apologize to Martin, but it's a great way to have a legacy over and above the airing that night. It gives it some life. So I do use some of these interviews on LinkedIn. And we're getting the brand out there, we're getting the story or the issue out there, and obviously helping my own profile, I guess. So the current position, it's an established format. It takes me about half a day a week, not recognized by the university. I've tried. Overtime. Take some teaching off me. I've tried everything, right? And in the end, they said, you know what, we all have to go into various committees, Adrian. That's your contribution over and above your day job. I said, okay, fair enough. And I don't want to let Martin down. What we have tried is to co-create, curate, and ask other people to come within the framework. So we have 9 subject areas in the Faculty of Business and Law. I've tried over 2 years with each one of those subject areas, marketing and entrepreneurship, the law team, the accounting and finance. If each one of those took one show every 3 months, that would give me a chance to do what else the university wants me to do, like grade on time or do a publication or write. I'm not as far down that road as I would like, but I do have some colleagues who are saying, yeah, I'll do a regular show. So Hayley Henderson from HR has done a regular show. Jay Bourne, who heads up our he's our social entrepreneur in residence. He heads up our sort of social work that we do with businesses. He does a show every 3 or 4 months. But I'm trying to pass this half-day commitment on and become the sort of the grandfather of it. It is not that easy, but I don't mind. I've kind of come to terms with it that it is my baby. I have a decision. Do I stop, give it up? And I don't want to do that because I think the format's really, really, really good, and I don't want to let Martin down. We have had the food and drink I mentioned. The lady that runs the Food and Drink Awards every year does a show on, straight after the awards night, and she will bring in some of her guests and some of her winners, again, to celebrate Northampton and Northamptonshire. A couple of things, really, is to get smarter at the links between research, teaching, and and business outreach, because the university, we've just said, isn't very good at business outreach in the sense that it's hard to know who to talk to. So this is a very accessible way to send the podcast or to give the asset back to the interviewer, and then follow up, of course, with, well, we talked about corporate social responsibility and some of your challenges. How could the university help you do that? You know, the topics that we draw out of them, we can respond to, or maybe I'm hearing it 4 or 5 times, and we can go back and say, hey, would you like some help on this? So it is an outreach tool. Now, what I do, I'm going to move a little bit, Martin, sorry, but I do also write an article in a local business magazine, 600 words. This is All Things Business Northampton. Some of you might come from Bedford. There's another one for Bedford. I managed to wangle a long time ago a curator page for them for free. So I use that, and then I'm starting to get a link between who I'm interviewing. Like the other day, I interviewed the chief executive of the Employee Ownership Association, right? The John Lewis model, 43 years organization, very fast growing, but at about the same time, it's coming out as an article in here. So this begins to give me some good assets. And again, this is printed, but it's also available on those links into All Things Business on their social media. I get the PDF as the one page, so I can start recirculating it through into LinkedIn, etc. So there's an awful lot of ability to have a voice as a passionate lecturer about strategy and responsible business. I get a lot of tools to put out there about responsible business, as well as asking people in to come and tell the story. And we had a bursary done, a bursary, £500. A student worked with me on doing a poster. Now, they analysed, gosh, it was about 2.5 years, what are we talking about, last year, so 2 years of the show. So they looked at 300 interviews and looked for the core themes, and there were 6 or 7 themes that were coming through. Corporate social responsibility was one. Lockdown, managing under lockdown came out. And, these were really quite powerful, themes that the university should be listening about, what local businesses are saying and what they needed in lockdown. And what, again, is a research opportunity or an outreach opportunity or a student project opportunity or an internship opportunity, whatever. So that, I was very impressed with what that student put together. And if anybody's interested in having a look at it, we can certainly send you this stuff afterwards. There's an example there of one of these articles that I write, so that I did write about the impact of community radio. Again, to support the show, support Martin, get the message out there. So what have been the highlights? Well, I've said the music, right? I mean, guys, ladies, have you all heard of ABBA? Yes. Have you heard of Tom Jones? Yes. Who else do I like, Martin? Take That and Shine gets a lot of recording. Who else are my favorites? The theme from Friends, S Club 7, Reach, right? You get the feeling? It's all very positive, upbeat stuff here, But what else have we kind of, just to go back to that previous one, if I may. Does it go that way? On here, what I learned was, and I haven't quite done it yet, if I interview a business person, tell me a story, how did you get to where you are, this, that, and the other. How can I turn it into a tool for the students? So the students study, you've all heard of the 4 Ps of marketing? Yeah? Some of these silly frameworks that we use teaching business. So, of course, if I got cleverer, when I speak to a business person, instead of telling me about your business, I was more precise, but linked it back to a theme or a theory or a model we were using in the classroom. So instead of just, letting them ramble, no. How do you use the 4 Ps of marketing? Then they'll either tell me how they do it, or they say, I don't know what you're talking about. So I can explain, the 4 Ps is price, product, placement, promotion, whatever. But that would be a trigger to do a teaching note to say to the students, listen to this because you're going to hear this guy talk about how he does his marketing or how he does his corporate social responsibility. So I think I've got to get better at making those links so that the asset I create, the podcast, can go into the classroom, but I can direct the students to look at specific things and listen out that supports their classroom, their classroom activities or topics. So what are the highlights? Well, my dean did an International Women's Day. She said, as part of this, will other people help me with this show? The dean said, yeah, I'll give it a go. I'll lead by example. Let's see if those other different parts of the university will do it. She did a show, International Women's Day, last year, and very good it was too. I've had some moments where my jaws drop to the floor while I'm listening to here, you know, in terms of the impact or the power of what people are saying. And two of them were a lady who had suffered and lost a big corporate job because of the menopause, and she set up a little charity around menopause in the workplace. I said, you know, that's quite a tough issue for a guy to handle, right? I think I did get some nice feedback. It was handled very delicately, but just give her the platform to talk about, A, what happened to her, B, what she's trying to do, and she's put a training program together for businesses. You know, great thing that needs, yeah, wow, what a thing to go into businesses. Our current mayor, what is this, a disadvantage. He had an abusive childhood. He's now 80, God bless him. He came through a child, you know, he said, when you have somebody on your radio show saying, do you know what he said? The first paycheck enabled me to buy my first pair of underpants. I hadn't had any underwear. Like, Jesus. How do you follow that? And somebody was saying before, in the end, you kind of work out how to, you know, but just sometimes that silence is powerful too. And then, but he came through it, and his story about how he came through and overcame all that sort of disadvantage. We're not only parochial. I keep saying to Martin, this is my chance to sell her, syndicate me, Martin, get me out there, wider audience. Well, we're only Northampton. No, we do have some national leaders. We have some international. Some of the people that I studied with years ago in Barcelona, you know, they're in all parts of the world every so often. Just to bring an outside perspective, I get one of them to come and do an interview. What's it like living in California under Trump? Somebody in Germany, you know, just around Brexit time. Somebody living in Asia, etc. And we also bring in national. So you heard me say about the Employee Ownership Association. I've had some pretty good national speakers. Colin Mayer, who was at Oxford University, he ran a 3-year project for the British Academy on the future of the corporation. You know, the future of business. I mean, this is some important stuff. What else? Mostly it's local, but we do try to mix and match a little bit. So it don't want to be overly parochial. I want this to be sort of bringing things from outside into the county as much as celebrating the county. Diversity, I think we could get better. Looking at a balance of speakers, guests, probably more males than females. Have we got enough from minority ethnic groups? Probably not. I've had a couple ladies doing nutrition and well-being, one Indian, one Asian, African origin, fantastic, local businesses doing some great stuff, some great stories. So I think, Martin, I don't know, we need to perhaps track that, just a bit stronger at that, giving everyone a voice. Lockdown lessons. Very interesting when you get a guy coming on and saying, it's changed my management style. A hard-nosed, hard-driven executive. He had to let go, couldn't micromanage, he had to trust his people. And when he comes on the radio and says, do you know what, I've been amazed by giving my staff some space, how creative and innovative they've been and how quick. Things that took 10 months took 10 weeks or 10 days to come up with a new product. And you're capturing this live on radio. It's really very powerful, and I learn a hell of a lot, as you can imagine. The biggest thing is the imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So the Vice-Chancellor, the previous Vice-Chancellor, came on the show a few times. Next thing I'm hearing from Martin, he wants his own show. And you think, hang on, that's my space, you can't do that. But he had a really good show once a month. It was called Shout to the Top, right? And he did a good job on bringing an issue like youth knife crime. So he'd bring the social worker in, the head of the social worker, the head of the police, perhaps our leading academic in that space. And then they would discuss that at great depth. But he was also a failed rock star. And on his leaving do, he came and played with his band from all those years ago. So he loved his music, like me. Bit different taste of music to mine, by the way. Right? He wasn't into ABBA, Tom Jones, but he did this show. And so the universities can get very engaged. Whoever's concerned about the university and how do you give them the benefits, you can get them very engaged. And I must say, Martin Steers, one of the highlights and one of the things that keeps me going with this show is Martin. I cannot praise him enough for his enthusiasm, his energy, what he's trying to do for the show, and his personal support he gives to me. But I bring him reality, right? Everybody else does their own. Even the VC worked out how to do the deck. I know that Martin loves the fact that at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, we still don't have a show. I'm still sending him bits.
10 minutes before broadcast.
And then it gets to 5 minutes to, Adrian, have you got the introductory sort of spiel yet? He pulls it off. I think he's now blocked out his diary permanently every Tuesday afternoon from about 4 o'clock just to make sure, because Adrian, I know, will be the last minute Charlie. But it's been a great pleasure working with him, and we're trying to sort of think about where do we go with the future? So sharing the workload a bit, we've got the framework, giving colleagues the chance, to air more elements of the university. They're reluctant, they're all under pressure, I know and understand that, but I'm sort of left with every half day a week. Okay, if that's my thing, my bag, I'm happy to sort of carry on. So I'm thinking how I can change it. Better planning, you've probably got the already from me, I'm not the world's best planner, I am a last minute Charlie, so perhaps we need to work on the planning, but maybe look through the year. You can always build in a Christmas show, interview all the faith groups. I've done that at one Christmas. The Muslim leaders, the Church of England leaders, all the different faith groups. Sponsorship. I think this show is really worthwhile for sponsorship, and we've got a couple that we're talking to, and we just haven't closed yet. That's probably because of lack of time, not because they don't want to do it. And then give them, 10, 15 minutes once a month, or invite them to do the interviews for me. So we've got a financial firm. Around the budget, they could provide contact for an interpretation of what the budget means, and they get some airtime in return for a sponsorship of the show. Not going to come to me, but it will help Martin with the funding of the show. I want to get a bit more cutting edge. I think I've developed a style. I've had a few politicians on. Certainly, you might have heard about this county knife crime in the news today. We have a terrible track record of children's services. So I've had the head of the children's services on. And you've got to think, how do you ask him the tough questions? Right? I am a chairman of 2 children's charities, and it makes my blood boil what we do sometimes and the waste of money. Can that come through when I'm talking to him? We've got to be respectful, not going to embarrass him. And I said, I'm going to ask you a tough question. Fair play. When I asked them that, they said, good, we'd like the chance to respond and put our perspective. And the way I tend to do it is through a little bit of humor. And, Martin or Matthew, whatever. I think, Matthew, don't you think, my sense is that the listeners are out there screaming at the radio, ask him this. And then they ask the tough question in a way, which is, you've been through a terrible government inspection. Have you just rearranged the deck chairs on the Titanic here? Have people lost their jobs? Have you brought in fresh blood? And fair play, they respond and they give you, the answer. But finding that way, I'm learning a craft. Most of you are probably, very experienced at this. I can hear there's some journalists. But hey, this is a great journey for me, but also I think I'm hopefully doing a service for the listeners to ask those tough questions. So I want to move more into perhaps, whoops, where's it gone? Sorry. I want to move more into that sharper cutting edge with a few more politicians as well. And then I'm using some of our students. I didn't touch on students are doing some interviews for me. I've had one that's curated a whole show for me. We now we've got some students going to Vietnam today. I'm taking some students to Barcelona, so I use that. I've done charity rides from here to Ypres, 400 kilometers in 4 days. So every stop, I've interviewed one of the riders and sent him a couple of minutes clip. There's lots and lots of ways to be creative in the content. Greater links back to the university's goals. I think we're very conscious of that, and with the new Vice-Chancellor, we're waiting to see exactly how she wants to play that, but give the senior leadership airtime, of course, and that helps them get their message across. Impact measurement. Every week I say, if you have any feedback on the show, if you want to suggest somebody on the show, if you want to be on the show, please write in. We don't get a lot, in fact, very, very few, but we have one who, by 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, she sends me what she thinks of that show, Connie, and she copies in Martin. And it's really good to get that feedback. But we have had some of the guests who tell me that they've won some business as a result of them hearing, the customers have heard them on the show. HR advisor was one of them. Karen came up. So it is about impact measurement. We might need to think about doing some research on that, going back to all the people we've interviewed. And I suppose the challenge then, I must say, before Christmas, Martin, or up until September, I had a bad end of last year. This became a chore. That half a day had become a chore. Oh, God, I stopped by being 3 weeks ahead. It was Monday morning. Oh, my God, who's going to be on the show tomorrow? And I really was trying to bring it to an end. And my wife, Adrian, do you get paid for it? No. Do you get no? It became hard work with all the other pressures. But he is worth supporting. And I just thought, you know what, if I have an ability and the opportunity to help change the world, to help get some powerful messages out there, I think I should keep doing that. And yeah, if the rest of my colleagues can't take a show every 12 weeks, fair enough, whatever. If they do one every 6 months, that's a help. Everything will help. But slowly we are widening the voice, widening the people who are involved, the diversity of the guests, experience, etc. And even down, by the way, some of our assessments now, you might like this one, we are quite ambitious, innovative in assessments. So some students, instead of asking them to write an essay or a management report, we ask them to prepare a 20-minute piece to go into the radio. And then we grade them on the quality of their research, on the delivery, etc., etc. And they kind of like it. And just as my colleague Adrian said, you know, they get terribly nervous, and you push them, you guide them, you coach them, and they come up with some really very, very good stuff indeed. So it's really quite remarkable. I would say if you've got a local university, do try and get them engaged and talk to Martin and I in terms of if you want us to speak to them about the power of local radio and the power of this thing. So the legacy, yes, the podcasts have a life long after the show, the leverage between different media, etc., and, you know, hopefully some impact. So why do we do it? Why do I do it? Let me just walk over to one of my props here. Nearly finished, Martin. I know you want to get me off. The station, I think we bring, the business show brings a distinctive programming style, and it's, you know, it's these 20 minutes extended interviews. We are covering local issues. We can address or react to what's in the press. I will be thinking about this knife crime for Tuesday's show because it was in the national press today. And it's celebrating our community. Northamptonshire is a county, they say, that aspires to be mediocre. Now, I'm not from Northamptonshire. I've lived here since 1996. My kids have grown up here. I recognize that. There's a kind of hide their light under a bushel. We've had some problems with local government, etc. But there's so much good stuff going on as well. So it's bringing the good out and then celebrating it. The university, well, staff, students, the institution, I think we could help them see the more value of it. And I wait to see what the VC wants to do, but certainly students are getting great value. The staff are, if they join me on this, and it does take perhaps something in them that, you know, this actor or this ego thing, if they want to be out there and get a greater profile. And what's happened to me? Well, I already had a profile in the county, but, you know, this keeps me in front of mind, I guess, gives me great entree into lots of places. I'm learning one hell of a lot. I've got to get better at harnessing it for the university. But the other reason I do it, of course, is that Martin, every so often, he gives me a nice T-shirt. So been there, done that, and, as they say, got the T-shirt. So thank you very much for listening. Hope you've got some sense of what this show's all about. I'm very happy to take any questions. Thank you.